hair is so dirty. Oof. Yikes. So dead too. Sorry I'm late. I had to restart my phone. Hello. I was trying to do that screen recording that I was going to send to the group chat, and then my phone like freaked out and decided that it wasn't going to stop screen recording, and I was literally pushing stop recording like I don't know how many times. And my phone would not let me stop screen recording, so I had to restart my phone. But I didn't get the screen recording that I told you I was gonna get. Yeah. So sorry. I'll do it after. Hello. Hello. I am, I don't know why I'm nervous for today. I don't think we have any big event. We rescued Lysandra. I feel like that's the only... honestly, I feel like all the big events in this book are done. I feel like it's just more laying down plot from here on out in this book, at least. Maybe this one might end on a cliffhanger. Maybe not. How are you? I'm better. I'm better. I don't know. I feel like I sort of spread myself out too thin in regards to like work, and I end up burning myself out. So I just needed a break this weekend. That's why I didn't do it live on Sunday. I just needed a little break, but I got a little break. I just had the day to myself. I went swimming and it absolutely killed my hair. Like I thought my hair was damaged when I got in the pool, and then I got out of it and like it's so fried, and it was because we just shocked the pool and put like chlorine in our pool and all that, so it was extra concentrated and it very much did kill my hair. But anyway, it was a nice day, and yeah, that's really, I just needed a day off. So thank y'all for being understanding, and I'm back, and we're gonna read chapters 62 through 66, I think. So it's a long day today, and then tomorrow it's a long day because I think I'm reading 67 through 79. 79? I think. Yeah. So it's bunker down because there's 2 long days today. Today and tomorrow are 2 long days. Yes, no spoilers, please. So let's thank you. Let's get started. Chapter 62. Okay, yes, okay. Manon didn't bother looking pleasant as she sent Abraxas slamming into the ground in front of the king's party. The horses whinnied and bucked while the 13 circled above the clearing in which they'd spotted the party. Wing leader, the king said from astride his war horse, not at all whatever. Beside him, his son, Dorian, cringed the way that blonde thing in Morath had when it attacked them. Oh, Roland. Was there something you wanted? The king asked coolly, or a reason you look halfway to Hela's realm? Manon dismounted Abraxas and walked toward the king and his son. The prince focused on his saddle, careful not to meet her eyes. There are rebels in your woods, she said. Oh! Why is she snitching? They took your little prisoner out of the wagon and they tried to attack me and my 13. I slaughtered them all. You see, this is why I should shut my fucking mouth and just keep reading. Oh my god. I hope you don't mind. They left 3 of your men dead in the wagon, though it seems their loss wasn't noticed. The king merely said, "You came all this way to tell me that?" I came all this way to tell you that when I face your rebels, your enemies, I shall have no interest in prisoners, and the 13 are not a caravan to support them as you will. She stepped closer to the prince's horse. Dorian, she said, a command and a challenge. Sapphire eyes snapped to hers. No trace of the otherworldly darkness, just a man trapped inside. She faced the king. You should send your son to Morath. It'd be his sort of place. Before the king could reply, Manon walked back to Abraxas. She'd planned on telling the king about Aelin, about the rebels who called themselves Adian and Rowan and Kale, but they were human and could not travel swiftly, not if they were injured. She owed her enemy a life debt. Manon climbed into Abraxas' saddle. My grandmother might be high witch, she said to the king, but I ride at the head of the armies. The king chuckled, ruthless. I think I rather like you, wing leader. That weapon my grandmother made. The mirrors. You truly plan to use shadow fire with it? The king's ruddy face tightened with warning. The replica inside the wagon had been a fraction of the size of what was depicted in the plans nailed to the wall. Giant, transportable battle towers, 100 feet high, their insides lined with the sacred mirrors of the ancients, mirrors that were once used to build and break and mend. Now they would be amplifiers, reflecting and multiplying any power the king chose to unleash until it became a weapon that could be aimed at any target. If the power were Kaltain's shadow fire... You ask too many questions, wing leader, the king said. I don't like surprises, was her only reply. Except this. This had been a surprise. The weapon wasn't for winning glory, or triumph, or the love of battle. It was for extermination. A full-scale slaughter that would involve little fighting at all. Any opposing army, even Aelin and her warriors, would be defenseless. The king's face was turning purple with impatience, but Manon was already taking to the skies. Abraxas beating his wings hard. She watched the prince until he was a speck of black hair, and wondered what it was like to be trapped within that body. Damn. Elid Loken waited for the supply wagon. It didn't come. Oh no. Oh no. A day late. 2 days late. She hardly slept for fear it would arrive when she was dozing. When she awoke on the third day, her mouth dry. It was already habit to turn down to help in the kitchen. She worked until her leg nearly gave out. Then, just before sunset, the whinny of horses and the clatter of wheels and the shouts of men bounced off the dark stones of the long keep bridge. Elid slipped from the kitchen before they could notice her, before the cook could conscript her into performing some new task. She hurried up the steps as best she could with her chain, her heart in her throat. She should have known. She should have kept her things downstairs. Should have found some hiding spot. Sorry, y'all. Up and up into Manon's tower. She refilled the water skin each morning and had amassed a little supply of food in a pouch. Elid threw open the door to Manon's room, surging for the pallet where she kept her supplies. But Vernon was inside. God damn it! He sat on the edge of Manon's bed as if it were his own. Going somewhere, Elid? Chapter 63. Can y'all hear the rain? It finally fucking rained here. It finally rained here! Where on earth could you be headed? Vernon said as he stood, smug as a cat. Panic bleeded in her veins. The wagon. The wagon. Was that the plan all along? To hide among those witches and then run? Elid backed toward the door. Vernon clicked his tongue. We both know there's no point in running, and the wing leader isn't going to be here anytime soon. Elid's knees wobbled. Oh gods. But is my beautiful, clever niece human, or which kind? Such an important question. He grabbed her by the elbow, a small knife in his hand. She could do nothing against the stinging slice in her arm, the red blood that welled. Not a witch at all, it seems. I am a Blackbeak, Elid breathed. She would not bow to him, would not cower. Vernon circled her. Too bad they're all up north and can't verify that. Fight, 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 her blood sang. Do not let him cage you. Your mother went down fighting. She was a witch, and you are a witch, and you do not yield. You do not yield. Vernon lunged, faster than she could avoid in her chains, one hand gripping her under the arm while the other slammed her head into the wood so hard that her body just stopped. That was all he needed. That stupid pause, to pin her other arm, gripping both in his hand while the other now clenched on her neck, hard enough to hurt, to make her realize that her uncle had once trained as her father had. You're coming with me. No. The word was a whisper of breath. His grip tightened, twisting her arms until they barked in pain. Don't you know what a prize you are? What you might be able to do? He yanked her back, opening the door. No. No, she wouldn't let him take her. Wouldn't. But screaming would do her no good. Not in a keep full of monsters. Not in a world where no one remembered she existed or bothered to care. She stilled, and he took that as acquiescence. Sorry. She could feel his smile at the back of her head as he nudged her into the stairwell. Something's in my eye. Blackbeak blood in your veins, along with our family's generous line of magic. He hauled her down the stairs, and bile burned her throat. There was no one coming for her, because she had belonged to no one. The witches don't have magic, not like us, but you, a hybrid of both lines. Vernon gripped her arm harder, right over the cut he'd made, and she cried out. The sound echoed hollow and small, down the stone stairwell. You do your house a great honor, Alide. Vernon left her in a freezing dungeon cell. No light, no sound, save for the dripping of water somewhere. Shaking, Alide didn't even have the words to beg as Vernon tossed her inside. You brought this upon yourself, you know, he said, when you allied with that witch and confirmed my suspicions that their blood flows through your veins. He studied her, but she was gobbling down the details of the cell. Anything to get her out. She found nothing. I'll leave you here until you're ready. I doubt anyone will notice your absence anyway. He slammed the door, and darkness swallowed her entirely. She didn't bother trying the handle. Manon was summoned by the Duke the moment she set foot in Morath. The messenger was cowering in the archway of the Eyrie and could barely get the words out as he took in the blood and dirt and dust that still covered Manon. She'd contemplated snapping her teeth at him just for trembling like a spineless fool, but she was drained, her head was pounding, and anything more than basic movement required far too much thought. None of the 13 had dared say anything about her grandmother, that she had approved of the breeding. Sorel and Vesta trailing mere steps behind her, Manon flung open the doors to the Duke's council chamber, letting the slamming woods say enough about what she thought of being summoned immediately. I can't wait. Y'all, I cannot wait until Manon finally just has enough and her and the 13 just fucking unleash hell on everyone. They go back. I can see it, so I can see it perfectly. They go back, they team up with Aelin, and Manon and the 13 literally fight in that big final battle with Aelin. Like, I need it. I need it now. Need it now. The Duke, only Kaltain beside him, flicked his eyes over her. Explain your appearance. Manon opened her mouth. If Vernon heard that Aelin Galathinius was alive, if he suspected for one heartbeat the debt that Aelin might feel toward Alide's mother for saving her life, he might very well decide to end his niece's life. Rebels attacked us. I killed them all. The Duke chucked a file of papers onto the table. They hit the glass and slid, spreading out in a fan. For months now you've wanted explanations. Well, here they are. Status reports on our enemies, larger targets for us to strike. His Majesty sends his best wishes. Manon approached. Did he also send that demon prince into my barracks to attack us? She stared at the Duke's thick neck, wondering how easily the rough skin would tear. Parrington's mouth twisted to the side. Roland had outlived his usefulness. Who better to take care of him than your 13? I hadn't realized we were to be your executioners. She should indeed rip out his throat for what he'd tried to do. Beside him, Kaltain was wholly blank, a shell. But that shadow fire. Would she summon it if the Duke were attacked? Sit and read the files, wing leader. She didn't appreciate the command and let out a snarl to tell him so, but she sat and read. Reports on Ilwi, on Melisande, on Fen Harrow, on the Red Desert, and Wendelin, and on Terrasen. According to the report, Aelin Galathinius, long believed to be dead, had appeared in Wendelin and bested 4 of the Val princes, including a lethal general in the king's army, using fire. Aelin had fire magic, Alide had said. She could have survived the cold, but that meant that magic still worked in Wendelin, and not here. Manon would bet a great deal of the gold hoarded at Blackbeak Keep that the man in front of her, and the king in Rifthold, was the reason why. Then a report of Prince Adian Ashriver, former general of Ardalan, kin to the Ash Rivers of Wendelin, being arrested for treason, for associating with rebels. He had been rescued from his execution mere weeks ago by unknown forces. Possible suspects, Lord Ren Alsbrook of Terrasen, and Lord Cale Westfall of Ardalan, who had loyally served the king as his captain of the guard until he joined forces with Adian this past spring and fled the castle the day of Adian's capture. They suspected the captain hadn't gone far, and that he would try to free his lifelong friend, the Crown Prince. Free him. The prince had taunted her, provoked her, as if trying to get her to kill him, and Roland had begged for death. If Cale and Adian were both now with Aelin Galathinius all working together, They hadn't been in the forest to spy, but to save the prince and whoever that female prisoner had been. They'd rescued one friend at least. The Duke and the King didn't know. They didn't know how close they'd been to all their targets, or how close their enemies had come to seizing their prince. That was why the captain had come running. He had come to kill the prince, the only mercy he believed he could offer him. The rebels didn't know that the man was still inside. "Well?" the Duke demanded. "Any questions?" "You have yet to explain the necessity of the weapon my grandmother is building. A tool like that could be catastrophic. If there's no magic, then surely obliterating the Queen of Terrasen can't be worth the risk of using those towers. Better to be over-prepared than surprised. We have full control of the towers." Manon tapped an iron nail on the glass table. "This is base information, Wing Leader. Continue to prove yourself and you will receive more." Prove herself? She hadn't done anything lately to prove herself, except shred one of his demon princes and butcher that mountain tribe for no good reason. A shiver of rage went through her. Unleashing the prince in the barracks hadn't been a message then, but a test, to see if she could hold up against his worst and still obey. "Have you picked a coven for me?" Manon forced herself to give a dismissive shrug. "I was waiting to see who behaved themselves the best while I was away. It'll be the reward." "You have until tomorrow." Manon stared him down. "The moment I leave this room, I'm going to bathe and sleep for a day. If you or your little demon cronies bother me before then, you'll learn just how much I enjoy playing executioner. The day after that, I'll make my decision." "You wouldn't be avoiding it, would you, Wing Leader?" "Why should I bother handing out favors to covens that don't deserve them?" Manon didn't give herself one heartbeat to contemplate what the matron was letting these men do as she gathered up the files, shoved them into Sorel's arms, and strode out. She had just reached the stairs to her tower when she spotted Astrid leaning against the archway, picking at her iron nails. Sorel and Vesta sucked in their breath. "What is it?" Manon demanded, flicking out her own nails. Astrid's face was a mask of immortal boredom. "We need to talk." She and Astrid flew into the mountains, and she let her cousin lead. Let Abraxas follow Astrid's sky-blue female until they were far from Morath. They alighted on a little plateau, covered in purple and orange wildflowers, its grasses hissing in the wind. Abraxas was practically grunting with joy, and Manon, her exhaustion as heavy as the red cloak she wore, didn't bother to reprimand him. They left the wyverns in the field. The mountain wind was surprisingly warm, the day clear, and the sky full of fat, puffy clouds. She'd ordered Sorel and Vesta to remain behind, despite their protests. If things had gotten to the point where Astrid could not be trusted to be alone with her, Manon didn't want to consider it. Perhaps that was why she had agreed to come. Perhaps it was because of the scream Astrid had issued from the other side of the ravine. It had been so like the scream of the blue blood heir, Petra, when her wyvern had been ripped to shreds, like the scream of Petra's mother when Petra and her wyvern, Keely, had tumbled into thin air. Astrid walked to the edge of the plateau, the wildflowers swaying about her calves, her riding leather shining in the bright sun. She unbraided her hair, shaking out the golden waves, then unbuckled her sword and daggers and let them thud to the ground. "I need you to listen and not talk," she said, as Manon came to stand beside her. A high demand to make of her heir, but there was no challenge, no threat in it, and Astrid had never spoken to her like that. So Manon nodded. Astrid stared out across the mountains, so vibrant here, now that they were far from the darkness of Morath. A balmy breeze flitted between them, ruffling Astrid's curls until they looked like sunshine given form. "When I was 28, I was off hunting crochans in a valley just west of the Fangs. I had 100 miles to go before the next village, and when a storm rolled in, I didn't feel like landing. So I tried to outrace the storm on my broom, tried to fly over it. But the storm went on, up and up. I don't know if it was the lightning or the wind, but suddenly I was falling. I managed to get control of my broom long enough to land, but the impact was brutal. Before I blacked out, I knew my arm was broken in 2 different places, my ankle twisted beyond use, and my broom shattered. Over 80 years ago. This had been over 80 years ago, and Manon had never heard of it. She'd been off on her own mission, where she couldn't remember now. All those years she'd spent hunting crochans had blurred together. When I awoke, I was in a human cabin, my broom in pieces beside the bed. The man who had found me said he'd been riding home through the storm and saw me fall from the sky. He was a young hunter, mostly of exotic game, which was why he had a cabin out in the deep wild. I think I would have killed him if I'd had any strength. if only because I wanted his resources. But I faded in and out of consciousness for a few days while my bones knitted together, and when I awoke again, he fed me enough that he stopped looking for food. Looking like food, sorry, or a threat. A long silence. I stayed there for 5 months. Did she fall in love? Did she fall in love? Did she fall in love and she had a kid? I'm not looking at the comments. Did she fall in love? I didn't hunt a single crochin. I helped him stalk game, found ironwood and began carving a new broom, and we both knew what I was, what he was. That I was long-lived and he was a human, but we were the same age at the moment, and we didn't care. So I stayed with him until my orders bade me report back to Blackbeak Keep, and I told him. I said I'd come back when I could. Manon could hardly think, hardly breathe over the silence in her head. She'd never heard of this, not a whisper. For Astrid to have ignored her sacred duties, for her to have taken up with this human man. I was Y'all! I was a month pregnant when I arrived back at Blackbeak Keep. Manon's knees wobbled. You were already gone, off on your next mission. I told no one, not until I knew that the pregnancy would actually survive those first few months. Not unexpected, as most witches lost their offspring during that time. For the witchling to grow past that threshold was a miracle in itself. But I made it to 3 months, then 4, and when I couldn't hide it anymore, I told your grandmother. She was pleased, and ordered me on bed rest in the keep, so nothing disturbed me or the witchling in my womb. I told her I wanted to go back out, but she refused. I knew better than to tell her I wanted to return to that cabin in the forest. I knew she'd kill him. So I remained in the tower for months, a pampered prisoner. You even visited, twice, and she didn't tell you I was there. Not until the witchling was born, she said, a long, uneven breath. It wasn't uncommon for witches to be overprotective of those carrying witchlings, and Astrid, bearing the matron's bloodline, would have been a valued commodity. I made a plan. The moment I recovered from the birth, the moment they looked away, I'd take the witchling to her father and present her to him. I thought maybe a life in the forest, quiet and peaceful, would be better for my witchling than the bloodshed we had. I thought maybe it would be better for me. Astrid's voice broke on the last 2 words. Manon couldn't bring herself to look at her cousin. I gave birth. The witchling almost ripped me in 2 coming out. I thought it was because she was a fighter, because she was a true Blackbeak, and I was proud, even as I was screaming, even as I was bleeding. I was so proud of her. Astrid fell silent, and Manon looked at her at last. Tears were rolling down her cousin's face. I'm guessing the baby did not make it. Gleaming in the sunshine, Astrid closed her eyes and whispered into the wind. She was stillborn. Oh, that's so sad. I waited to hear that cry of triumph, but there was only silence. Silence, and then your grandmother. She opened her eyes. Your grandmother struck me. She beat me. Again and again. All I wanted was to see my witchling, and she ordered them to have her burned instead. She refused to let me see her. I was a disgrace to every witch who had come before me. I was to blame for a defective witchling. I had dishonored the Blackbeaks. I had disappointed her. She screamed it at me again and again, and when I sobbed, Manon didn't know where to stare, what to do with her arms. A stillborn was a witch's greatest sorrow and shame, but for her grandmother... Astrid unbuttoned her jacket and shrugged it off into the flowers. She removed her shirt, and the one beneath, until her golden skin glowed in the sunlight, her breasts full and heavy. Astrid turned, and Manon fell to her knees in the grass. There, branded on Astrid's abdomen in vicious, crude letters was one word: unclean. She branded me, had them heat up the iron in the same flame when my witchling burned, and stamped each letter herself. She said I had no business ever trying to conceive a Blackbeak again, that most men would take one look at the word and run. 80 years. For 80 years she had hidden this, but Manon had seen her naked, No, she hadn't. Not for decades and decades. When they were witchlings, yes, but in my shame I told no one. Sorrel and Vesta. Sorrel knew because she was in that room. Sorrel fought for me, begged your grandmother. Your grandmother snapped her arm and sent her out. But after the matron chucked me into the snow and told me to crawl somewhere and die, Sorrel found me. She got Vesta, and they brought me to Vesta's eyrie deep in the mountains, and they secretly took care of me for the months that I couldn't get out of bed. Then one day I just woke up and decided to fight. I trained. I healed my body. I grew strong, stronger than I'd been before, and I stopped thinking about it. A month later I went hunting for Crochans and walked back into the keep with three of their hearts in a box. If your grandmother was surprised I hadn't died, she didn't show it. You were there that night I came back. You toasted in my honor and said you were proud to have such a fine second. Still on her knees, the damp earth soaking into her pants, Manon stared at that hideous brand. I never went back to the hunter. I didn't know how to explain the brand, how to explain your grandmother, or apologize. I was afraid he'd treat me as your grandmother had, so I never went back. Her mouth wobbled. I'd fly overhead every few years just to see. She wiped at her face. He never married. And even when he was an old man, I'd sometimes see him sitting on that front porch, as if he were waiting for someone. Something was cracking and aching in Manon's chest, caving in on itself. Astrid sat among the flowers and began pulling on her clothes. She was weeping silently, but Manon didn't know if she should reach out. She didn't know how to comfort, how to soothe. I stopped caring, Astrid said at last, about anything and everything. After that it was all a joke and a thrill, and nothing scared me. That wildness, that untamed fierceness, they weren't born of a free heart, but of one that had known despair so complete that living brightly, living violently, was the only way to outrun it. But I told myself, Astrid finished buttoning her jacket, I would dedicate my life wholly to being your second, to serving you, not your grandmother, because I knew your grandmother had hidden me from you for a reason. I think she knew you would have fought for me, and whatever your grandmother saw in you that made her afraid, it was worth waiting for, worth serving, so I have. That day Abraxas had made the crossing, when her 13 had looked ready to fight their way out should her grandmother give the order to kill her. Astrid met her stare. Sorrel, Vesta, and I have known for a very long time what your grandmother is capable of. We never said anything because we feared that if you knew, it could jeopardize you. The day you saved Petra instead of letting her fall, you weren't the only one who understood why your grandmother made you slaughter that Crochan. Astrid shook her head. I am begging you, Manon. Do not let your grandmother and these men take our witches and use them like this. Do not let them turn our witchlings into monsters. What they've already done. I'm begging you to help me undo it. Manon swallowed hard, her throat achingly tight. If we defy them, they will come after us and they will kill us. I know. We all know. That's what we wanted to tell you the other night. Manon looked at her cousin's shirt, as if she could see through to the brand beneath. That is why you've been behaving this way. I'm not foolish enough to pretend that I don't have a weak spot where witchlings are concerned. This was why her grandmother had pushed for decades to have Astrid demoted. I don't think it's a weak spot, Manon admitted, and glanced over her shoulder to where Abraxas was sniffing at his wildflowers. You're to be reinstated as second. Astrid bowed her head. I am sorry, Manon. You have nothing to be sorry for, she dared add. Are there others whom my grandmother treated this way? Not in the 13, but in other covens. Most let themselves die when your grandmother cast them out, and Manon had never been told. She had been lied to. Manon gazed westward across the mountains. Hope, Alid had said. Hope for a better future, for a home. Not obedience, brutality, and discipline, but hope. We need to proceed carefully. Astrid blinked, the gold flecks in her black eyes glittering. What are you planning? Something very stupid, I think. Damn. Chapter 64. Rowan barely remembered anything of the agonizing trip back to Rifthold. By the time they had snuck across the city walls and through the alleys to reach the warehouse, he was so exhausted that sorry that he'd hardly hit the mattress before unconsciousness dragged him under. He awoke that night, or was it the next, with Aylin and Adian sitting on the side of the bed, talking. Solstice is in 6 days. We need to have everything lined up by then, she was saying to her cousin. So you're going to ask Rest and Brula to just leave a back door open so you can sneak in? Don't be so simple-minded. I'm going to walk in through the front door. Of course she was. Rowan let out a groan, his tongue dry and heavy in his mouth. She whirled to him, half lunging across the bed. How are you feeling? She brushed a hand over his forehead, testing for fever. You seem all right? Fine, he grunted. His arm and shoulder ached, but he'd endured worse. The blood loss had been what knocked his feet out from under him. More blood than he'd ever lost at once, at least so quickly, thanks to his magic being stifled. He ran an eye over Aylin. Her face was drawn and pale. A bruise kissed her cheekbone, and 4 scratches marred her neck. He was going to slaughter that witch. He said as much, and Aylin smiled. If you're in the mood for violence, then I suppose you're just fine. But the words were thick, and her eyes gleamed. He reached out with his good arm to grip one of her hands and squeeze tightly. Please don't ever do that again, she breathed. Next time, I'll ask them not to fire arrows at you. Or me. Her mouth tightened and wobbled, and she rested her brow on his good arm. She lifted the other arm, sending burning pain shooting through him as he stroked her hair. It was still matted in a few spots with blood and dirt. She must not have even bothered with a full bath. Adian cleared his throat. We've been thinking up a plan for freeing magic, and taking out the king, and Orion. Just tell me tomorrow, Rowan said, a headache already blooming. The mere thought of explaining to them, again, that every time he'd seen Hellfire used, it had been more destructive than anyone could anticipate, made him want to go back to sleep. God, without his magic. Humans were remarkable, to be able to survive without leaning on magic. He had to give them credit. Adian yawned, the lousiest attempt at one Rowan had ever seen, and excused himself. Adian, Rowan said, and the general paused in the doorway. Thank you. Any time, brother. Aww. He walked out. Aylin was looking between them, her lips pursed again. What? He said. She shook her head. You're too nice when you're wounded. It's unsettling. Seeing the tears shine in her eyes just now had nearly unsettled him. If magic had already been freed, those witches would have been ashes the moment that arrow hit him. Go take a bath, he growled. I'm not sleeping next to you while you're covered in that witch's blood. She examined her nails, still slightly lined with dirt and blue blood. Ugh, I've washed them 10 times already. She rose from her seat on the side of the bed. Why? He asked. Why did you save her? She dragged a hand through her hair. A white bandage around her upper arm peeked through her shirt with the movement. He hadn't even been conscious for that wound. He stifled the urge to demand to see it, assess the injury himself, and tug her close against him. Because the golden-haired witch, Astrid, Aylin said. She screamed Manon's name the way I screamed yours. Rowan stilled. His queen gazed at the floor, as if recalling the moment. How can I take away somebody who means the world to someone else, even if she's my enemy? A little shrug. I thought you were dying. It seemed like bad luck to let her die out of spite, and... She snorted. Falling into the ravine seemed like a pretty shitty way to die for someone who fights that spectacularly. Rowan smiled, drinking in the sight of her. The pale, grave face, the dirty clothes, the injuries, yet her shoulders were back, chin high. You make me proud to serve you. A jaunty slant to her lips, but silver lined her eyes. I know. Damn. You look like shit, Lysandra said to Aylin. Then she remembered Evangeline, who stared at her wide-eyed and winced. Sorry. Evangeline refolded her napkin in her lap, every inch the dainty little queen. You said I'm not... Hold on, sorry. Those words were jumbled together for a second. You said I'm not to use such language, and yet you do. I can curse, Lysandra said, as Aylin suppressed a smile, because I'm older, and I know when it's most effective. And right now, our friend looks like absolute shit. Evangeline lifted her eyes to Aylin, her red gold hair bright in the morning sun through the kitchen window. You look even worse in the morning, Lysandra. Aylin choked out a laugh. Careful, Lysandra. You've got a hellion on your hands. Helion? Girl, I cannot read today. My mind, I feel like scrambled eggs. Lysandra gave her young ward a long look. If you've finished eating the tarts clean off our plates, Evangeline, go out onto the roof and raise hell for Adian and Rowan. Take care with Rowan, Aylin said. He's still on the mend, but pretend that he isn't. Men get pissy if you fuss. A wicked gleam in her eye, Evangeline bounded for the front door. Aylin listened to make sure the girl did indeed go upstairs and then turned to her friend. She's going to be a handful when she's older, Lysandra groaned. You think I don't know that? 11 years old and she's already a tyrant. It's an endless stream of why. I would prefer not to. And why? And no, I should not like to listen to your good advice, Lysandra. She rubbed her temples. A tyrant, but a brave one, Aylin said. I don't think there are many 11-year-olds who would do what she did to save you. The swelling had gone down. The bruises still marred Lysandra's face, and the small, scabbed cut near her lip remained an angry red. And I don't think there are many 19-year-olds who would fight tooth and nail to save a child. Lysandra stared down at the table. I'm sorry, Aylin said. Even though Arabin orchestrated it, I'm sorry. You came for me, Lysandra said so quietly that it was hardly a breath. All of you. You came for me. She had told Nesrin and Kale in detail of her overnight stay in a hidden dungeon beneath the city streets. Already the rebels were combing the sewers for it. She remembered little of the rest, having been blindfolded and gagged. Wondering if they would put a wordstone ring on her finger had been the worst of it, she said. That dread would haunt her for the rest of her life. Or for a while. Look at me just making shit up. You thought we wouldn't come for you? I've never had friends who cared what happened to me, other than Sam. And Wesley. He absolutely would have gone and saved her. Most people wouldn't have let me be taken. Dismissed me as... What did... Oh my god. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was crying over I was crying over Sam. Okay. Are we back? I think we're back. So that was the last thing y'all heard, me crying over Sam? Okay. No. Most people would have let me be taken. Dismissed me as just another whore. I've been thinking about that. Oh? Aylin reached into her pocket and pushed a folded piece of paper across the table. It's for you. And her. We don't need... Lysandra's eyes fell upon the wax seal. A snake in midnight ink. Clarissa's sigil. What is this? Open it. Glancing between her and the paper, Lysandra cracked the seal and read the text. I, Clarisse Duvency, hereby declare that any debts owed to me by... The paper began shaking. Any debts owed to me by Lysandra and Evangeline are now paid in full. At their earliest convenience, they may receive the mark of their freedom. Not me about to cry! Not me about to cry! The paper fluttered to the table as Lysandra's hand slackened. She raised her head to look at Aylin. Oh, Aylin said, even as her own eyes filled. I hate you for being so beautiful, even when you cry. Do you know how much money? Did you think I'd leave you enslaved to her? I don't know what to say to you. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Lysandra put her face in her hands and sobbed. I'm sorry if you wanted to do the proud and noble thing and stick it out for another decade, Aylin began. Lysandra only wept harder. But you have to understand that there was no running way I was going to leave without... Shut up, Aylin, Lysandra said through her hands. Just shut up. She lowered her hands, her face now puffy and splotchy. Aylin sighed. Oh, thank the gods. You can look hideous when you cry. Lysandra burst out laughing. Oh, I knew she was gonna pay her debts. There was no way. There was no way. There was no way she wasn't. I knew it was coming. Aww. Manon and Astrid stayed in the mountains all day and night after her second revealed her invisible wound. They caught mountain goats for themselves and their wyverns and goddamn goats, and roasted them over a fire that night as they carefully considered what they might do. When Manon eventually dozed off, curled against Abraxas with a blanket of stars overhead, her head felt clearer than it had in months, and yet something nagged at her, even in sleep. She knew what it was when she awoke. A loose thread in the loom of the three-faced goddess. Sorry. You ready? Astrid said, mounting her pale blue wyvern and smiling. A real smile. Manon had never seen that smile. She wondered how many people had. Wondered if she herself had ever smiled that way. Manon gazed northward. There's something I need to do. When she explained it to her second, Astrid didn't hesitate to declare that she would go with her. So they stopped by Morath long enough to get supplies. They let Sorel and Vesta know the bare details and instructed them to tell the Duke she'd been called away. They were airborne within an hour, flying hard and fast above the clouds to keep hidden. Mile after mile they flew. Manon couldn't tell why that thread kept yanking, why it felt so urgent, but she pushed them hard, all the way to Rifthold. Yo, Alid is still in this fucking basement and no one knows? No one has noticed? Alina's in the trenches. Nobody gives a shit. Is it cold outside? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. It feels amazing out. Yeah. I kid you not. An hour ago, it was 98 degrees. It was 100 degrees an hour ago. Right now, it's 76. And it feels amazing. Let's see if my phone will let me get away with having the windows down, because it might overheat. Which I think I'm going to go get a new phone this weekend, if I'm being all completely honest, because my phone is just falling apart. So we can talk about that when I'm done reading. 4 days. Alina had been in this freezing, festering dungeon for 4 days. Oh. It was so cold that she could hardly sleep, and the food they chucked in was barely edible. Fear kept her alert, prompting her to test the door, to watch the guards whenever they opened it, to study the halls behind them. She learned nothing useful. 4 days, and Manon had not come for her. None of the Black Peaks had. She didn't know why she expected it. Manon had forced her to spy on that chamber after all. She tried not to think about what might await her now. Tried and failed. She wondered if anyone would remember her name. If anyone would even remember her name when she was dead. If it would ever be carved anywhere. She knew the answer. And knew there was no one coming for her. I noticed that she was gone. That counts for something. Chapter 65. Beep beep. Beep beep. It's humid as fuck outside though. Jesus Christ. Okay. Rowan was more tired than he'd admit to Aelin or Adian, and in the flurry of planning, he hardly had a moment alone with the Queen. It had taken him 2 days of rest and sleeping like the dead before he was back on his feet and able to go through his training exercises without being winded. After finishing his evening routine, he was so exhausted by the time he staggered into bed that he was asleep before Aelin had finished washing up. No, he hadn't given humans nearly enough credit all these years. It would be such a damn relief to have his magic back. If their plan worked. Considering the fact that they were using hellfire, things could go very, very wrong. Cale hadn't been able to meet with Ress or Brullo yet, but tried every day to get messages to them. The real difficulty, it seemed, was that over half the rebels had fled as more Valg soldiers poured in. 3 executions a day was the new rule. Sunrise, noon, and sunset. Former magic wielders, rebels, suspected rebel sympathizers. Cale and Nesrin managed to save some, but not all. The cawing of crows could now be heard on every street. God damn. They are in the motherfucking trenches. It's a little windy, I'm not gonna lie. But we'll get through it. A male scent in the room snapped Rowan from sleep. He slid his knife out from under his pillow and sat up slowly. Aelin slumbered beside him. A male scent? Hold on. Who the hell is that? her breathing deep and even, yet again wearing one of his shirts. Some primal part of him snarled in satisfaction at the sight, at knowing she was covered in his scent. Rowan rolled to his feet, his steps silent as he scanned the room, knife at the ready. But the scent wasn't inside, it was drifting in from beyond. Rowan edged to the window and peered out. No one on the street below, no one on the neighboring rooftops, which meant Lorcan had to be on the roof. Oh, I forgot about Lorcan. God damn it. I forgot about that bitch. Is that part of my bra that's up there? I sure think so. No, it's not. Oh, that's just... Never mind. His old commander was waiting, arms crossed over his broad chest. He surveyed Rowan with a frown, noting the bandages in his bare torso. "Should I thank you for putting on pants?" Lorcan said, his voice barely more than a midnight wind. "I didn't want you to feel inadequate," Rowan replied, leaning against the roof door. Lorcan huffed a laugh. "Did your queen claw you up, or... Goddamn, or are the wounds from one of those beasts she sent after me? I was wondering who would ultimately win, you or the wordhounds." A flash of teeth. "I slaughtered them all." "Why'd you come here, Lorcan? You think I don't know that the heir of Malif Firebringer was planning something for the summer solstice in 2 days? Have you fools considered my offer?" A carefully worded question, to bait him into revealing what Lorcan had only guessed at. Aside from drinking the first of the summer wine and being a pain in my ass, I don't think she's planning anything at all. "So that's why the captain is trying to set up a meeting with guards at the palace? How am I supposed to keep up with what he does? The boy used to serve the king. Assassins, whores, traitors. What fine company you keep these days, Rowan. Better than being a dog leashed by a psychotic master. Is that what you thought of us? All those years that we worked together, killed men and bedded females together. I never heard you complain. I didn't realize there was anything to complain about. I was as blind as you. And then a fiery princess flounced into your life and you decided to change for her, right?" A cruel smile. "Did you tell her about Solomir?" "She knows everything." "Does she know? I suppose her own history makes her even more understanding of the horrors you committed on our queen's behalf." "Your queen's behalf. What is it, exactly, about Aelin that gets under your skin, Lorcan? Is it that she's not afraid of you? Or is it that I walked away from you for her?" Lorcan snorted. "Whatever you're planning, it won't work. You'll all die in the process." "No, they won't." That was highly likely, but Rowan said, "I don't know what you're talking about." "You owe me more than that horse shit. Careful, Lorcan, or you'll sound like you care about someone other than yourself." As a discarded bastard child growing up on the back streets of Dornell, Lorcan had lost that ability centuries before Rowan had even been born. He'd never pitied him for it, though. Not when Lorcan had been blessed in every other regard by Hellas himself. Lorcan spat on the roof. "I was going to offer to bring your body back to your beloved mountain to be buried alongside Lyria once I finish with the keys. Now I'll just let you rot here, alongside your pretty little princess." God damn! That was too far! That was too far! That was not nice. He tried to ignore the blow, the thought of that grave atop his mountain. Is that a threat? Why would I bother? If you're truly planning something, I won't need to kill her. She can do that all on her own. Maybe the king will put her in one of those collars, just like his son. A chord of horror struck so deep in Rowan that his stomach turned. "Mind what you say, Lorcan. I bet Maeve would offer good coin for her, and if she gets her hands on that word key, you could imagine just as well as I what sort of power Maeve would wield then. Worse, so much worse than he could imagine if Maeve wanted Aelin, not dead but enslaved, a weapon without limit in one hand and the heir of Malif Firebringer in her other. There would be no stopping her." Lorcan read the hesitation, the doubt. Gold gleamed in his hand. "You know me, Prince. You know I'm the only one qualified to hunt down and destroy those keys. Let your queen take on the army gathering in the south. Leave this task to me." The ring seemed to glow in the moonlight as Lorcan extended it. "Whatever she's planning, she'll need this, or else you can say goodbye." Lorcan's eyes were chips of black eyes. "We all know how you handled saying it to God damn! Saying it to Lyria." Rowan leashed his rage. "Swear it." Lorcan smiled, knowing he'd won. Swear that the ring grants immunity to the Valg, and I'll give it to you, Rowan said, and he pulled the amulet of Orinth from his pocket. Lorcan's focus snapped to the amulet, to the otherworldly strangeness it radiated, and swore. Is he... He's not for real, right? He's not for real. A blade flashed, and then the scent of Lorcan's blood filled the air. He clenched his fist, lifting it. I swear on my blood and honor that I have not deceived you in any of this. The ring's power is genuine. Rowan watched the blood drip onto the roof. 1 drop, 2, 3. Lorcan might have been a prick, but Rowan had never seen him break an oath before. His word was his bond. It had always been the one currency he valued. They both moved at once, chucking the amulet and the ring into the space between them. Rowan caught the ring and swiftly pocketed it, but Lorcan just stared at the amulet in his hands. His eyes shadowed. Rowan avoided the urge to hold his breath and stayed silent. Lorcan slid the chain around his neck and tucked the amulet into his shirt. You're all going to die, carrying out this plan or in the war that follows. You destroy those keys, Rowan said, and there might not be a war. A fool's hope. There will be a war. It's too late to stop it now. Too bad that ring won't keep any of you from being spiked on the castle walls. The image flashed through his head, made all the worse, perhaps because of the times he'd seen it himself, done it himself. What happened to you, Lorcan? What happened in your miserable existence to make you this way? He'd never asked for the full story, had never cared to. It hadn't bothered him until now, before he would have stood beside Lorcan and taunted the poor fool who dared defy their queen. You're a better male than this. Am I? I still serve my queen, even if she cannot see it. Who was the one who abandoned her the first time a pretty human thing opened her legs? That is enough. But Lorcan was gone. Rowan waited a few minutes before going back downstairs, turning the ring over and over in his pocket. I have to sneeze. I have to sneeze. Aelin was awake in the bed when he entered, the windows shut and curtained the hearth dark. Well, she said, the word barely audible above the rustling of the blankets as he climbed in beside her. His night-keen eyes allowed him to see the scarred palm she held out as he dropped the ring into it. She slid it onto her thumb, wriggled her fingers, and frowned when nothing particularly exciting happened. A laugh caught in his throat. How mad is Lorcan going to be? Aelin murmured as they laid down face to face. When he eventually opens up that amulet, finds the Val commander's ring inside, and realizes we gave him a fake. Oh, she's good. No, like, she's good. She even had me fooled. I was fooled. Damn, now my hair getting frizzy. She's good. She's good, y'all. The demon ripped down the remaining barriers between their souls as though they were paper, until only one remained, a tiny shell of self. He did not remember waking, or sleeping, or eating. Indeed, there were very few moments when he was even there, looking out through his eyes. Only when the demon prince fed on the prisoners in the dungeons, when he allowed him to feed, to drink alongside him. That was the only time he now surfaced. Whatever control he'd had that day. What day? He couldn't remember a time when the demon had not been there inside of him. And yet, Manon, a name. Do not think of that one. Do not think of her. The demon hated that name. Manon. Enough. We do not speak of them, the descendants of our kings. Speak of whom? Good. Bro, at this point, like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, there is no point saving Dorian anymore. That boy is gone. He is gone. You ready for tomorrow? Aelin said to Kale as they stood on the roof of her apartment, gazing toward the glass castle. In the setting sun, it was awash in gold and orange and ruby, as if it were already aflame. Kale prayed it wouldn't come to that, but as ready as I can be. He tried not to look too hesitant, too wary, when he'd arrived minutes ago to run through tomorrow's plan one last time, and Aelin had instead asked him to join her up here, alone. She was wearing a loose white shirt tucked into tight brown pants, her hair unbound, and hadn't even bothered to put on shoes. It is fucking cold. He wondered what her people would think of a barefoot queen. Aelin braced her forearms on the roof rail, hooking one ankle over the other as she said, "You know that I won't unnecessarily endanger any lives. I know. I trust you." She blinked, and shame washed through him at the shock on her face. "Do you regret," she said, "sacrificing your freedom to get me to Wendelin?" "No," he said, surprising himself to find it true. "Regardless of what happened between us, I was a fool to serve the king. I like to think I would have left someday." He needed to say that to her, had needed to say it from the moment she had returned. "With me," she said, her voice hoarse. "You would have left with me when I was just Selena. But you were never just Selena, and I think you knew that, deep down, even before everything happened. I understand now." She studied him with eyes that were far older than 19. "You're still the same person, Cale, that you were before you broke the oath to your father." He wasn't sure whether or not that was an insult. He supposed he deserved it, after all he'd said and done. "Maybe I don't want to be that person anymore," he said. That person, that stupidly loyal, useless person, had lost everything. His friend, the woman he'd loved, his position, his honor. Lost everything, with only himself to blame. "I'm sorry," he said. "About Nehemiah. About everything. It wasn't enough. It never would be." But she gave him a grim smile, eyes darting to the faint scar on his cheek. "I'm sorry I mauled your face, then tried to kill you." She turned to the glass castle again. "It's still hard for me to think about what happened this winter. But in the end, I'm grateful you sent me to Wendelin and made that bargain with your father." She closed her eyes and took a shallow breath. When she opened her eyes, the setting sun filled them with liquid gold. Cale braced himself. "It meant something to me, what you and I had. More than that, your friendship meant something to me. I never told you the truth about who I was because I couldn't face that truth. I'm sorry if what I said to you on the docks that day, that I'd pick you, made you think I'd come back and it would all be fixed. Things changed. I changed." He'd waited for this conversation for weeks now, months now, and he'd expected himself to yell or pace or just shut her out entirely, but there was nothing but calm in his veins, a steady, peaceful calm. "You deserve to be happy," he said, and meant it. She deserved the joy he so often glimpsed on her face when Rowan was near, deserved the wicked laughter she shared with Adian, the comfort and teasing with Lysandra. She deserved happiness, perhaps more than anyone. She flicked her gaze over his shoulder to where Nesrin's slim silhouette filled the doorway on top of the roof, where she'd been waiting for the past few minutes. "So do you, Cale. You know she and I haven't—" "I know, but you should. Philippe, Nesrin is a good woman. You deserve each other." This is assuming she has any interest in me. A knowing gleam in those eyes. "She does." Cale again glanced toward Nesrin, who gazed at the river. He smiled a bit. But then Aelin said, "I promise I'll make it quick and painless. For Dorian." His breathing locked up. "Thank you, but if I ask..." He couldn't say it. "Then the blow is yours. Just say the word." She ran her fingers over the eye of Elena, its blue stone gleaming in the sunset. "We do not look back, Cale. It helps no one and nothing to look back. We can only go on." There she was, that queen looking out at him, a hint of the ruler she was becoming, and it knocked the breath out of him because it made him feel so strangely young, when she now seemed so old. "What if we go on," he said, "only to more pain and despair? What if we go on only to find a horrible end waiting for us?" Aelin looked northward, as if she could see all the way to Terrasen. "Then it's not the end." "Damn." "Only 20 of them left. I hope to hell they're ready tomorrow," Cale said under his breath, as he and Nesrin left a covert gathering of rebels at a run-down inn beside the fishing docks. Even inside the inn, the cheap ale hadn't been able to cover the reek of fish coming from both the guts still splattered on the wooden planks outside and the hands of the fishmongers who shared the tavern room. "Better than only 2. And they will be," Nesrin said, her steps light on the dock as they strode down the riverfront. Lanterns on the boats docked alongside the walkway bobbed and swayed with the current. From across the Avery, the faint sound of music trickled from one of the pretty country estates on its banks. A party on the eve of the summer solstice. Once, a lifetime ago, he and Dorian had gone to those parties, dropping by several in one night. He'd never joined it. He'd never enjoyed it. Had only gone to keep Dorian safe, but he should have enjoyed it. He should have savored every second with his friend. He'd never realized how precious the calm moments were, but he wouldn't think about it. What he had to do tomorrow. What he'd say goodbye to. They walked in silence until Nesrin turned down a side street and walked up to a small stone temple wedged between two market warehouses. The gray rock was worn, the columns flanking the entrance embedded with various shells and bits of coral. Golden light spilled from the inside, revealing a round, open space with a simple fountain in its center. Nesrin climbed the few steps and dropped a coin into the sealed bin beside a pillar. "Come with me." And maybe it was because he didn't want to sit alone in his apartment and brood over what was to come tomorrow. Maybe it was because visiting a temple, however useless, couldn't hurt. Cale followed her inside. At this hour, the sea god's temple was empty. A small door at the back of the space was padlocked. Even the priest and priestess had gone to sleep for a few hours before they had to awake ahead of the dawn, when the sailors and fishermen would make their offerings, reflect, or ask for blessings before setting off with the sun. 2 lanterns, crafted from sun-bleached coral, hung from the dome ceiling, setting the mother-of-pearl tiles above them glimmering like the surface of the sea. Nesrin took a seat on one of the 4 benches set along the curved walls, a bench for each direction a sailor might journey in. She picked south. "For the southern continent?" Cale asked, sitting beside her on the smooth wood. Nesrin stared at the little fountain, the bubbling water the only sound. "We went to the southern continent a few times. Twice when I was a child, to visit family. Once to bury my mother. Her whole life I'd always catch her gazing south, as if she could see it. I thought only your father came from there. Yes, but she fell in love with it, and said it felt more like home than this place. My father never agreed with her, no matter how many times she begged him to move back. Do you wish he had?" Her night-dark eyes shifted toward him. "I've never felt as though I had a home, either here or in the Mila's Agia, the God City," he said, recalling the history and geography lessons that had been drilled into him. It was more frequently called by its other name, Antica, and was the largest city on the southern continent, home to a mighty empire in its own right, which claimed it had been built by the hands of gods, also home to the Torre? Sesame. Anyway, the best mortal healers in the world. Oh! He'd never known Nesrin's family had been from the city itself. "Where do you think home might be?" he asked. Nesrin braced her forearms on her knees. "I don't know," she admitted, twisting her head to look back at him. "Any ideas?" "You deserve to be happy," Aelin had said earlier that night. An apology and a shove out the door, he supposed. He didn't want to waste the calm moments. So he reached for her hand, sliding closer as he interlaced their fingers. Nesrin stared at their hands for a heartbeat, then sat up. "Maybe once everything is over," Kayla said hoarsely, "we could figure that out. Together. Promise me," she breathed, her mouth shaking. Indeed, that was silver lining her eyes, which she closed long enough to master herself. Nesrin Philippe moved to tears. "Promise me," she repeated, looking at their hands again, "that you will walk out of that castle tomorrow." He wondered why she'd brought him in here, the sea god, and the god of oaths. He squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Gold light rippled on the surface of the sea god's fountain, and Cale offered up a silent prayer. "I promise." How the fuck is he how the fuck is he gonna promise that when he doesn't fucking know? Rowan was in bed, casually testing his left shoulder with careful rotations. He'd pushed himself hard today while training, and soreness now throbbed in his muscles. Aelin was in her closet, preparing for bed, quiet as she'd been all day and evening. With 2 urns of hellfire now hidden a block away from an abandoned building, everyone should be tiptoeing around. One small accident and they would be incinerated so thoroughly that no ash would remain. He'd been made sure that wasn't But he'd made sure that wasn't her concern. Tomorrow, he and Adian would be the ones bearing the urns through the network of sewer tunnels and into the castle itself. Aelin had tracked the word hounds to their secret entrance, the one that fed right to the clock tower, and now that she'd tricked Lorcan into killing them all for her, the way would be clear for him and Adian to plant the vats, set the fuses, and use their face swiftness to get the hell out before the tower exploded. Then Aelin and the captain would play their part, the most dangerous of all, especially since they hadn't been able to get a message in the palace beforehand. And Rowan wouldn't be there to help her. He'd gone over the plan with her again and again. Things could go wrong so easily, and yet she hadn't looked nervous as she downed her dinner. But he knew her well enough to see the storm brewing beneath the surface, to feel its charge even from across the room. Rowan rotated his shoulder again, and soft footsteps sounded on the carpet. "I've been thinking," Rowan started, and then forgot everything he was going to say as he bolted upright in bed. Aelin leaned against the closet doorway, clad in a nightgown of gold. "Damn. Are they about to fuck?" I wish I hadn't worded it like that. Sorry. Metallic gold, as he'd requested. It could have been painted on her for how closely it hugged every curve and dip, for all that it concealed. A living flame. That's what she looked like. He didn't know where to look, where he wanted to touch first. "If I recall correctly," she drawled, "someone said to remind him to prove me wrong about my hesitations. I think I had two options. Words, or tongue and teeth." A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Did I now?" She took a step, and the full scent of her desire hit him like a brick to the face. He was going to rip that nightgown to shreds. He didn't care how spectacular it looked. He wanted bearskin. "Damn! Damn!" "Don't even think about it," she said, taking another step, as fluid as molten metal. "Lysandra lent it to me." His heartbeat thundered in his ears. If he moved an inch, he'd be on her, would take her in his arms and begin learning just what made the air of fire really burn. But he got out of bed, risking all of one step, drinking down the side of the long, bare legs and the curve of her breasts. We're getting into dangerous territory. I don't think I can read this out loud anymore. "You said that things had changed, that we'd deal with it." Her turn to dare another step. Another. "I'm not going to ask you for anything you're not ready or willing to give." He froze as she stopped directly before him, tipping back her head to study his face as her scent twined around him, awakening him. God's that scent. From the moment he'd bitten her neck in Gwendolyn, the moment he'd tasted her blood and loathed the beckoning wildfire that crackled in it, he'd been unable to get it out of his system. "Aelin, you deserve better than this. Than me." He'd wanted to say it for a while now. She didn't so much as flinch. "Don't tell me what I do and don't deserve. Don't tell me about tomorrow, or the future, or any of it." He took her hand. Her fingers were cold, shaking slightly. "What do you want me to tell you, Fireheart?" She studied their joined hands, and the gold ring encircling her thumb. He squeezed her fingers gently. When she lifted her head, her eyes were blazing bright. "Tell me that we'll get through tomorrow. Tell me that we'll survive the war. Tell me..." She swallowed hard. "Tell me that even if I lead us all to ruin, we'll burn in hell together." "We're not going to hell, Aelin," he said. "But wherever we go, we'll go together." Her mouth wobbled slightly, and she released his hand only to brace her own on his chest. "Just once," she said. "I want to kiss you just once." Every thought went out of his head. "It sounds like you're expecting not to do it again." The flicker of fear in her eyes told him enough. Told him that her behavior at dinner might have been mostly bravado to keep Adian calm. "I know the odds. You and I have always relished damning the odds." She tried and failed to smile. He leaned in, sliding a hand around her waist, the lace and silk smooth against his fingers, her body warm and firm beneath it, and whispered in her ear, "Even when we're apart, tomorrow, I'll be with you every step of the way, and every step after, wherever that may be." She sucked in a shuddering breath, and he pulled back far enough for them to share breath. Her fingers shook as she brushed them against his mouth, and his control nearly shredded apart right there. "What are you waiting for?" he said. the words near guttural. "Bastard," she murmured, and kissed him. Her mouth was soft and warm, and he bit back a groan. His body went still. His entire world went still. And that whisper of a kiss, the answer to a question he'd asked for centuries. He realized he was staring only when she withdrew slightly. His fingers tightened at her waist. "Again," he breathed. She slid out of his grip. "If we live through tomorrow, you'll get the rest." He didn't know whether to laugh or roar. "Are you trying to bribe me into surviving?" She smiled at last, and damn if it didn't kill him, the quiet joy in her face. They had walked out of the darkness and pain and despair together. They were still walking out of it. So that smile, it struck him stupid every time he saw it and realized it was for him. Rowan remained rooted to the center of the room as Aylin climbed into bed and blew out the candles. He stared at her through the darkness. She said softly, "You make me want to live, Rowan. Not survive. Not exist. Live." He didn't have the words. Not when what she had said hit him harder and deeper than any kiss. So he climbed into bed and held her tightly all through the night. That's cute. Chapter 66. Oh, my back. Aylin ventured out at dawn to snag breakfast from the vendors in the main market of the slums. The sun was already warming the quiet streets, and her cloak and hood quickly turned stuffy. At least it was a clear day. At least that bit had gone right, despite the crows cackling over the corpses in the execution squares. The sword at her side was a dead weight. Too soon she'd be swinging it. Too soon she'd face the man who had murdered her family and enslaved her kingdom. Too soon she would put an end to her friend's life. Maybe she wouldn't even walk out of the castle alive. Or perhaps she would walk out wearing a black collar of her own, if Lorcan had betrayed them. Everything was prepared. Every possible pitfall had been considered. Every weapon had been sharpened. Lysandra had taken Evangeline to have their tattoos formally stamped off yesterday, and then collected her belongings from the brothel. Now they were staying in an upscale inn across the city, paid for with the small savings Lysandra had squirreled away for years. The courtesan had offered her help again and again, but Aylin ordered her to get the hell out of the city and to head for Nesserin's country home. The courtesan warned her to be careful, kissed both her cheeks, and set off with her ward, both of them beaming, both of them free. Hopefully they were on their way out now. Aylin brought a bag of pastries and some meat pies, barely listening to the market around her, already abuzz, with early revelers out to celebrate the solstice. They were more subdued than most years, but given the execution, she didn't blame them. "Miss?" She stiffened, going for her sword, and realized that the pie vendor was still waiting for his coppers. He flinched and retreated a few steps behind the wooden cart. "Sorry," she mumbled, dumping the coins into his outstretched hand. The man gave her a wary smile. "Everyone's a bit jumpy this morning, it seems." She half-turned. "More executions?" The vendor jerked his round chin toward a street leading off the market. "You didn't see the message on your way in?" She gave a sharp shake of the head. He pointed. She'd thought the crowd by the corner was watching some street performer. "Oddest thing. No one can make any sense of it. They say it's written in what looks like blood, but it's darker." Aylin was already heading toward the street the man had indicated, following the throng of people pressing to see it. She trailed the crowd, weaving around curious revelers and vendors and common market guards, until they all flowed around a corner into a brightly lit dead-end alley. The crowd had gathered at the pale stone wall at its end, murmuring and milling about. What does it mean? Who wrote it? Sounds like bad news, especially on the solstice. There are more, all saying the same thing, right near every major market in the city. Okay. Aylin pushed through the crowd. I had to cover the message because I don't want to spoil it for myself. Aylin pushed through the crowd, an eye on her weapons and purse lest a pickpocket get any bad ideas. And then, the message had been written in giant black letters, the reek coming off of them sure enough that of Valg blood. Jesus! As if someone with very, very sharp nails had ripped open one of the guards and used him as a paint bucket. Aylin turned on her heel and ran. She hurtled through the bustling city streets and the slums, alley after alley, until she reached Cale's decrepit house and flung open the door, shouting for him. The message on the wall had only been one sentence: payment for a life debt. One sentence just for Aelin Galathinius. One sentence that changed everything. Witch killer. The human is still inside him. Out of all the things that I thought it was going to be, it was not that. What the fuck is Manon doing? What is she doing? Oh my god! Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. My fucking, what is it called? My fucking Manon and Aelin are gonna be best friends agenda is alive. It's alive. Yeah, it's alive. It's alive. My fucking Aelin and Manon being best friends agenda is absolutely alive. Oh my god. I forgot Manon was in Rifthold. I forgot she was going back. Does that mean she's gonna help them? Oh my god. Damn. Two best friends, they might kiss. Who knows? Oh, because the thread of fate was pulling her. Duh. Oh my god. This changes everything. This changes everything. Oh my god. This changes everything. Wow. 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 And now they're not going to kill Dorian. Tomorrow's going to be so good. Tomorrow I'm literally going to like set my hair on fire. Like stress. Yeah, tomorrow's gonna be interesting for sure. Anyway, oh, I have bad news. I have bad news, friends. I cannot go live on Saturday for the next 3 Saturdays. I literally have an event back, like, so this Saturday I have a birthday party to attend for one of my kids, and then next week I have a baby shower to attend, and then the week after that I have a wedding. So I cannot go live for the next 3 Saturdays. I am sorry, but I will be live every Sunday. Depending on, sorry. Yes, 3 Saturdays. I can do 3 Saturdays. Tomorrow we're doing 67 through 79. Yeah, it's gonna be like a lot. I'm gonna be busy. Ooh. And then school is starting. Oh, that's another thing. Okay, so school starts back up on the 30th for me. College. In case you didn't know, I'm not in like high school or anything. I'm talking about college. Anyway, so classes start the 30th. I'm going to test the waters because I am taking a lot of classes. So I'm going to test the waters and see if I can still continue my lives during the week. But there might be a chance where I switch my lives to just purely Saturdays and Sundays. So I might not be able to do lives on the weeks, during the weekdays anymore. But we'll just see. I'll see how much work I have. I usually, could stay pretty on top of it, but that was when I was working part-time. But I'm going to be working full-time because my boss threatened to cut my pay if I went back to part-time. So I cannot do that. So I'll be working full-time. I know, I really do. I need to leave, but it's like there's literally nowhere else that will pay me what I'm getting paid now. And where I can like not work weekends, because I hate working weekends. I like my weekends. And like literally teachers do not get paid shit. So like if I go to another center, like they're probably gonna cut my pay anyway. So I'm trying to just push through it until I can just find another job somewhere else that pays me good. Yeah, I work early childhood education. I do not like working with older kids. I like my twos. Yes, teachers do need better pay. But yes, yeah, it's rough, but I'll be okay. I think I'll be okay. No, my degree, I was going to get my degree in education, but I switched my major because I realized that I'm very burnt out from working with kids. I like don't want to work with kids anymore. Like I don't see me doing that for the long run. So I just picked English as my major, and hopefully it'll get me a job in writing, which is what I really want to do and what I really enjoy doing. Even though I haven't written on my blog in like months, but whatever. I'm hoping to get a job in writing, or if worst comes to worst, I have experience teaching. I'll have a degree in English. I could just teach English to like high schoolers or something. Yeah, early childhood is non-existent, but my boss pays really like, so most early childhood centers in my area get paid about, at the max, like $10 an hour. I'm making 15, which is like really good for like daycares. And I'm getting a raise in September, so I'll probably either be making like $17.50 or $18, which is like unheard of for daycares in like the area that I'm in. So thank you. Oh, you can make that at Starbucks. Okay, that's another thing. I don't want to work retail, y'all, or like fast food, or like anything with like that deals with people. I'm very, very, very antisocial. Like I worked in a restaurant. Like my first job was in a restaurant, and I was making a quarter over minimum wage. This was when I was in high school, and I hated it. People were so rude. Like even the staff was rude. I just did not have a good experience. I did not want to. So like I don't want to work. I thought about working for like Barnes and Noble or something, but they wouldn't pay me enough. And I don't like dealing with people. No, yeah. And then I know Costco pays really, really good, but I don't want to work with people. I hate working with people. That like if I could just stay at home and like read books and like write about them, that is my ideal job. To just literally sit at home and write. That's what I want to do with my life. I hate working with people. Ugh. You can come up here and design cars with me. Don't you have to be like crazy good at math for that? Marketing. I'm not a very good salesperson. No. No, my dream job is like writing. The program does math for you. Oh. No, girl, you right? Well, hold on. I might be interested in some of these. Hold on. We'll see. I just, oh God, because I don't think, you know how there's those people that, you know, they can endure like 9 to 5s. I don't think I'm one of those people. I genuinely hate the strict routine of it all. It used to bring me a lot of comfort, and now it's just like, I hate setting my alarms, and I wish I don't know, I think I'm just burnt out working there or working with kids in general, because like it sucks. I work remotely. That sounds amazing. I would love to work remotely. Work remotely and get paid really good. That's my dream job right there. It's not sustainable at all. It's really not. And especially with everything that teachers are expected to do, and people, don't even get me started on the teacher shortage and how just like shit teachers get treated for literally doing like one of the most important jobs in the country, like in the world. Teachers are like such a, anyway. And yeah. Yeah. Teachers don't. It's I don't think I ever really saw myself being a teacher though. I think I mainly wanted to be a teacher because I didn't know what to do with my life, and I wanted to please my mom because my whole family are like families of teachers. My mom is a teacher and she absolutely loves it. My mom loves teaching. And I think watching my mom teach and seeing how much my mom loved teaching made me realize that I did not want to be a teacher because I could never put that much passion into it. But I am good at it. Like, I'm good with the kids and I'm good at it. And my grandpa is a professor and he's a teacher. So, I think I just wanted to please my family with getting my major in education. And then I realized that I don't really want to, and it doesn't really make me very happy. So I just switched to English. Yeah, no. Teachers do not get paid well enough. That's why I like my twos. Because, I mean, they're bad. They're little shits, bro. Little shits. But, like, it's not like with high schoolers where it's like you have to, like, pull back. Like, I hug my kids and I cuddle with them and they give me, like, all this affection, but, like, I can still teach them. They still, like, understand. It's not, because I've worked with ages from, like, 6 weeks to, like, 5th grade, I think, was the oldest that I worked with. And, no, yeah, you have to go to librarian school. And it's like, you have to go for, like, a while, I think, to be a librarian. Because I would love to be a librarian. I would love to work in a library. Are you kidding me? I went to our public library here in my town, and I was literally, like, I almost moved to tears when I walked in because it just smelled so good. I love the smell of books. The Dewey Decimal System. Yeah, I would love to be a librarian. What do you learn in librarian school other than, like, how to actually read the Dewey Decimal System? I'm sure there is too, but it's like, what is there? Oh, y'all, there's a rainbow. I don't know if y'all will be able to see it. Hold on. How do you flip that? I always forget how to flip this camera. I feel like such an old person. How do I flip this camera? Hold on. Because I can't, like, I can't double tap. Because see, I just liked my own live. Hold on. How do I flip my camera? I feel like an old lady. Oh, there it is. I found it. Look, you can see it. It's right there. Oh, not my stubby little finger. It's right there. Ah, rainbow. How cute. But I've been talking to Loki a lot about, like, my what I want to do and, like, what I should do. Like, I feel so bad. But anyway, he's been very helpful in just, like, encouraging me to go after what I want. And, which, okay, I'm gonna ask right now, if I were to, okay, it's not, like, set in stone. It's something that I've been heavily considering and, like, that I've been wanting to do, but I didn't know if, like, there was any interest in it or if it would just flop and I would put all this work and effort into it for it just to not go anywhere. But if I were to open up an Etsy shop, because y'all know that I draw, it's not, like, my greatest passion, but, like, it is something that I've been, like, really thinking about. Okay, so if I were to start an Etsy shop for like just like little bookmarks or like little cute things for your books, would y'all be interested in it? And you can answer truthfully. You can say yes or no. I need y'all to answer truthfully so that I know if I, will have, people actually interested in it. Because I'm making like my Selena fan art that I did. I'm turning that into a bookmark and sending it to some of my friends from the group chat. And that's really what made me start thinking about it. And I was like, oh, why don't I just print these out and, sell them on an Etsy shop? Which, if you're in the group chat, you're still getting them for free. So, like, don't worry. I won't charge y'all for it. But, like, why couldn't I open up an Etsy shop? I do fan art all the time. Most of it I hate, but, like, I could do other things, like little cute designs. And so I thought, maybe I could do it. Who knows? But I know a lot of people have Etsy shops for like bookmarks and like annotated books. I wanted to do annotate books for y'all and send them to y'all. But I didn't know if there was any interest in that. Because I know a lot of people do it, so I didn't know if it was just something that was like worn out or not. Yes. Okay. Maybe I'll start planning because I've been looking for a printer. Also, if you have any like good printer recommendations that like print really clear pictures and like can maybe print stickers, that would be very much appreciated because I'm still looking for one. I know that Canon printers are really good. But yeah. Anyway, that's just food for thought. Just something that I've been thinking about. Anyway, what? My phone is telling me that it's time to go. Okay. I will see y'all tomorrow. Woof. We got a lot of ground to cover tomorrow. And I just know my ass is going to be crying. So I'm going to put my Squishmallow in my car tonight so I do not forget to bring it tomorrow. But anyway, yeah, I will see y'all tomorrow. Thank you for joining and watching, as always. Sorry I had to take a break. And sorry I won't be available for the next 3 Saturdays. Make a TikTok putting your squish in your car. not y'all not believing me. Okay. Pretty sure. Okay, I'll make a TikTok. Y'all, I have Alzheimer's that runs in my family, okay? My grandma's sister has it. We're pretty sure my grandma has it. She just doesn't want to go to the doctor. I come from a line of very like forgetful people, and we have ADHD that runs in our family. So like, I'm sorry, I'm very forgetful. Put it on your story. Okay, I will. Okay, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye, love y'all.